Hello, ladies. So I wanted to get on here just so I could update you guys on kind of what's been going on with me over the past couple of months. I haven't been on here in a while, and forgive me for looking in the wrong place. Y'all know how that is recording on your phone. I'm looking over here, and it actually lines up that I'm looking at y'all if I look over here. So but yeah, so what's happened thus far is that one, I've kind of been in a slum just dealing with everything surrounding dealing with infertility and just the headache of everything in general. It seems that a lot of you guys, which I'm very happy for those of you that have recently gotten a big fat positive or were, are, well, or at least are pregnant and your, pregnancies are hopefully going well. And some of you have already delivered. So happy for you guys and that, things have worked out well for you thus far. And in saying that, I also want to mention, just kind of for the majority, at least for me, with many of you that I do talk to on my social media and either on here on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, it's one of those things the majority of the people have kind of you've made progress and you're moving on, and that's great of sorts. But for me, at least, it's kind of that puts you a little bit more in kind of a slum, because you kind of start realizing that even the people that you were on this journey with, you're kind of left behind of sorts, because they've passed you, not necessarily in this race, but in this whole journey of sorts. They're busy doing other things, whether it's planning baby showers or taking care of their new baby or whatever the case is. Their focus now is on something different than focusing on just the infertility aspect of things. And so that kind of, I say, just put me kind of a little bit in a slump where I wasn't really necessarily eager to get on here to share anything, because I felt like there was really nothing good to share. So I want to say I left you guys off maybe in December or something like that, when I was doing my second medicated cycle with Femara. That cycle obviously, wasn't successful. In both January and February, both of those cycles ended up being chemical pregnancies for me. The January cycle was a medicated one, and in February actually was a non-medicated cycle, and that one ended up being a chemical pregnancy. Well, for me at least, an affirmative chemical pregnancy, because I hadn't taken a trigger shot or anything of that sort, so there would be no reason for my pregnancy test to have a reactive line had I not, been using any medicines whatsoever. So then moving on from that, we're in March now. I'm currently on my third medicated cycle, using Femara. Yesterday was Thursday. I went to my doctor's appointment. I started out on this cycle with, say, 4 to 5 antral follicles on each side, which is, I guess, kind of good, or for me at least, progressing back to what I thought my baseline was when I had done IVF in the previous year. So I had 4 to 5 antral on each side starting out. And then yesterday, which was cycle day 12, I had a 13 millimeter on my left ovary and a 20 millimeter on my right one. So that was good. And so he was comfortable and just wanted me to go ahead and take my trigger shot that night. So I took my trigger shot last night, and we're planning to do the insemination on Saturday morning. And so we'll see where that goes. And that's, again, I said this is our third medicated cycle, simply because the current insurance that we have, they'll only cover 3 IUIs of sorts, whether it's 3 medicated cycles. They'll only cover 3 monitored cycles, whether you do the insemination portion or not. And so with that, of course, we're hoping to get good news out of this cycle, but again, not too hopeful because other ones haven't worked successfully, at least. So, in still doing that, we were still trying to make, little plans to move forward with doing a second cycle of IVF, even though, of course, the financial aspect of it was our biggest burden. So with our insurance changing at the beginning of next month, I had asked my physician to call in whatever medications he would think I would need during a cycle of IVF, because I wanted to go ahead and get whatever medicines I could out of our current insurance policy. I mean, we have it, so why not at least use it to our best benefit? Because the new insurance policy we're going to be getting in April, thus far, they're stating like there's no infertility coverage whatsoever. They won't even cover any medicines for infertility or anything. But there's a whole nother set of issues with that new policy that I'll be facing, because even with their benefit summary plan, reading through all the exclusions and such, there's wording and such in there that I feel like is an exclusion to the exclusion. But that's just a whole nother can of worms. We'll get to that when we get there. So he ordered the prescriptions, and I knew that for especially the big ticket item medications, you guys know, like the stemming stuff, whether that be Gonal-F, Follow-Stem, whatever, Menopur, the Cetrotide, Ganirelix, those are the the most costly medications out of your whole cycle. So with having those quantity limits for all of those medications, well, even the Novarel and Avidril on my policy has quantity limits, like you can't go over once in a lifetime. This isn't just a monthly thing. This is lifetime that you have insurance with them. So I wanted to go ahead and get those medications just to try to make things more affordable on the back end. And so I went and had that done. And while we were, waiting on them to, kind of work through some of that from the pharmacy side of it, we had also, we're also currently waiting to hear back from one of the nonprofits that we applied to for a fertility grant for IVF. Of course, we're hoping that we get selected for it. So we're waiting on that. So backing up to the medication aspect of things, I want to run through really quick the craziness, which is ended up being a relief, but it's still kind of crazy how it all unfolded. So a couple of weeks had went by in between when my doctor had ordered my prescriptions, and I wasn't like eagerly like rushing for them to call me back or whatever to set up delivery, payment, and all that jazz, because at least I knew I had until the end of the month to do that before my current insurance would change. Well, at the beginning of the week, I started getting phone calls from the pharmacy, and they were saying, first they had called and said that they had to change the prescription because first my physician had ordered Gonal-F for me, and then they said, we called and got a prescription for the Follow-Stem instead because your policy requires that you use that brand name, yada yada whatever. And I'm like, okay. At least for me, I was like, I feel like that was a waste of time because it won't matter whether I use Gonal-F or Follow-Stem, because again, that was one of those things. There was a quantity limit associated with it, and you can only get, it works out, I think it works out to 3,000 IU that you can get in a lifetime. Well, I had already used that benefit for Follotropins, period. I had already used it when I used Breville in my first cycle of IVF last year. So I was already expecting to have to pay for my Follotropin out of pocket. Well, then they made that phone call and I told them the whole spiel. Then again, I want to say Tuesday, somebody else called me and was telling me something in regards to the medications or whatever, and that they had put through the order for the Follow-Stem, and my insurance policy rejected the claim because they said policy limits had been exceeded. Well, quantity limits had been exceeded. And I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised. I already knew this. Well, then, so I gave that person the spiel on, what was going on. And then Wednesday morning, another lady called me and said something along the lines of, oh, well, we still have a prior authorization and all that we're waiting for the gonal F. She said the prior authorization was to see if they could get that approved or something, yada, yada. And again, I told her, well, I think that's probably a waste of time because I already knew my policy limits and all of that. And so then she's like, oh, well, let me put this through and send them an email or whatever to their insurance department for the pharmacy. Let them know what's going on. Well, then that was like 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. Well, about 7 p.m. Wednesday evening, a different rep called me again. This is like the fourth time I've talked to them this week, and says, oh, well, she wanted to know like what date I wanted to set up delivery for my medications. And I was like, well, I'm really not in any rush to get them all, except for certain ones that I know I can get with my insurance because I still have a quantity limit benefit that I can get. Well, then she proceeded to say that all my medications had already been processed through insurance. And then she told me my copay amount total for all the medicines. And I was like, what? And so then I told her to read to me each medicine that she was saying the copay was for. So then she read through them and she included the Follistim. And I was like, wait, what? Like, you guys just told me the day before that, yes, they denied the claim for it because the quantity limit had already been exceeded for the policy. And so, of course, I was kind of like excited, it kind of gives you like that butterfly feeling in your stomach where somebody's telling you want a car or something, and you thinking like it's a kind of like a joke, or they've made some kind of like a mistake or, clerical error or something. But honey, so fast, we went and got our card to give to her for that payment. And, so she did all the, she got all the information and everything, got it all set up, and said that she was going to have it set up to be delivered on Friday. And I was like, cool. And after I got off the phone with her, of course, my stomach is still kind of in knots because I'm nervous, because I'm just waiting for one of them to call me back. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry. There's been some kind of error, blah, 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 on somebody's part for this or that not getting processed correctly or something. Because I know for a fact that I've used that benefit when I did IVF the first time, because the numbers only worked out to where I could get only 40 vials of the Breville. So anywho, so I was eagerly anticipating getting the email saying that my order had been shipped, so that I know everything was like legit. Like, yes, I'm getting this medication. And at that, it was actually another shocking thing was that it was actually more Follistim than they had initially told me to begin with. Because I want to say initially the doctor had ordered me like three of the gonal F. And then when they called and had it switched to the Follistim, they wanted 4. Well, then when I spoke with her Wednesday, she said that there were 8. And I'm like, what? I mean, this is part of the reason why I was so floored. Like, I'm like, what? You're going to give me double the medicine amount even that I thought was initially ordered by the physician. And at that, you're saying my insurance is now agreeing to pay for it. And at that, y'all, the copay is less than the copay I paid the first time when I got the Phylotropin. So, of course, unless there's been some recent like switch or change in the policy, even though the policy doesn't even renew until like the end of this month, April, I don't know what happened. I highly suspect that between the pharmacy and the insurance company that somebody made a mistake or something. And of course, I hope that no one loses their job behind it. But I thank you, whoever you are, I thank you sincerely. So that's lessened the burden from one aspect of doing IVF again. And of course, now we have to worry about is the procedure portion, coming up with the money to pay for that. So I'm hoping this video isn't too long for y'all, but I really do have a lot to update you guys on. So So our three options when it comes to paying for the procedure part of IVF are: one, just taking a longer time frame this year to save up the money over a few months to be able to pay for it. Second, of course, is like I just told you guys, the grant that we applied for, hoping that comes through, or any other grant, if one of those grant benefits come through for us. And then the third option is the more, I guess, drastic option of sorts for us, is that with my profession, I'd be able to seek employment with an employer who falls into one of those mandated states, which are, right now there's 15 mandated states where insurance companies have to offer infertility coverage. And within those 15 states, there's a few where specifically the infertility coverage has to include coverage for IVF. So just to name a couple of them, because I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, like Illinois, Massachusetts, and I think West Virginia, maybe believe Texas, but there's a few of them. There's like a handful where IVF has to be part of the coverage for infertility treatment. So like I said, so the third option is me seeking employment with a company in one of those states, so that I would have to be offered that benefit with my insurance, and just using that to be able to pay for the procedure aspect of it. Of course, that would be something short term. I'd be kind of working like on a contract type basis, and be doing it just so many months at a time, just long enough for me to be able to get the insurance and be able to use it and hopefully have success in it, or what have you. And of course, that would require me to be living out of state from where I live, because I obviously don't live in a mandated state, but me living out of state, and potentially my husband leaving his job and just coming, to live with me, and then at the time just me working, and so that at least we could be together and we wouldn't be apart for 3 to 6 months, we don't know. And then in the meantime, of course, just renting out our home, because of course we don't want to sell our home, because if we know the end result is, if I went that route to get one of those, to get employment through a company in another state, that we would eventually move back to our home state, and we wouldn't want to put ourselves in the position to, sell our home. And then by the time we're ready to move back, potentially here I am pregnant, and then we have to start over from square one and find somewhere else to live, whether that be renting a place or purchasing another home. That would just seem like an extra step for nothing, at least in my opinion. So yeah, that's where we are with that, with our three options as far as that. So I've updated you guys on all of that. And also, I don't remember if I mentioned to you guys about initially when my current clinic had quoted me like a price to do like 3 mini IVFs or whatever. And I want to say, it was 3 mini IVF cycles with the genetic testing. It came out to be like $19,100 for real. Like, I mean, that's a ton of money. That's a shit ton of money. It really is. And especially to be handing over to someone all at once. Granted, it's cheaper when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. It's cheaper than sometimes paying for individual cycles. But if we had the means to get our hands on that kind of lump sum of money to be able to pay for this, even the same way I explained it to my current physician, if I had 19 grand to give you, I still wouldn't give it to you, because you don't offer a shared risk program. And for any of you that don't know what those are, is potentially, it's kind of like a refund type program where you get your money, like a money back guarantee of sorts. You either get a percentage or 100% of your money back of that lump sum after you do all cycles, and you don't have a take home baby. And so I was telling him for For instance, it just wouldn't make sense to us, because it would be like financial suicide, at least to me, in my opinion. Because if I had 20 grand to go and hand somebody, I'd most certainly go and hand it to a clinic who does a shared risk program, so that even with a shared risk program, some of them, you do 6 cycles of IVF versus the 3 that he's offering me. I could do 6. You're still paying for medicines out of pocket, and depending on the program, monitoring like your ultrasound and blood work may or may not be included. Well, I still told him if I had that 20 grand, it makes sense to give it to a shared risk program, because at least now that we've gone through one cycle of IVF that has failed, it's hit us in the face that yes, this can happen to us. For you to put in all that financial, effort, burden, and, emotional aspect of it, and it completely fail and hit you in the face. That's happened to us. So we're more aware of that. And so at least if we give 20 grand to a clinic and we do IVF 6 times with a shared risk clinic, at least we get our 20 grand back, 100%. Of course, you'd still be out of the money for your medications and potentially for monitoring visits and travel if, the clinic is a good drive away from you or something. But you guys see what I'm saying? Like, it's better to be out, it's better to be out. Let's just say for me, since I'm a hard person to stem and it takes the maximum amount of medication for me to take to have a decent response, then it makes more sense for me to put out, let's just say it's $5,000 for one cycle of meds. It makes sense if somebody was paying straight cash, I'm saying, no insurance coverage, 6 cycles of IVF times 5 grand for just medicines. That's $30,000, right? 6 times 5 is 30. So 30 grand plus the 20 you're going to give the clinic, that's $50,000. So then with a clinic like the one I'm with now, they don't have shared risk, you'd be out of $50,000 plus with a non-shared risk program. Does that make sense? Versus going with a shared risk program, at least you get 20 grand of that back, so that at least you still have those funds as startup money to keep going. And of course, this is nothing against, even like now I'm doing individually like paid cycles right now because that's what I can afford to do. But for somebody that has the financial ability to be able to get their hands on $20,000, $30,000 in a lump sum, that makes absolutely no sense for you to not do a shared risk program. You see what I'm saying? And of course, there's always that potential that you could do a shared risk program and then your first or second time doing IVF, it worked. You have a take-home baby. You'd then be paying more money. And you know what I mean? On that side of it, if you were successful on your first, especially your first attempt of IVF, you'd be paying more. But for somebody like me, and I know that we have sperm issues, egg issues, and we've had a previously failed cycle, those are 3 things against us. That makes no sense to not do a shared risk program with having, the means to have, that, like lump of money to be able to pay up to a clinic. It makes no sense. And of course, with my current physician at the time, he got what I was saying, but he was trying to make it like, oh, well, it's more expensive in the long run. You know what I mean? Like, that would be your case in point may be true for someone that had never done IVF before. But for my peace of mind and the fact that I've had a failed cycle, that's worth every penny to be able to pay more on the front to have a guarantee, if that makes sense. It's like a safety net. So that's all of, that thus far. I've told you guys about the planning for the IVF, and I told you about my 2 recent chemicals that I've had and that I'm currently on a medicated cycle. So yeah, we're just kind of in limbo, kind of just waiting to see what comes next, because, even if we are, somehow chosen to get any grant funds, that you have a year to be able to use the funds that they pay directly to the clinic. And I've thought about this. Let's just say I get pregnant this cycle and say it's a successful pregnancy. If I can help it, I know this might sound crazy to some of you guys, but if I can help it, if the timing would work out, I'd still most certainly keep those funds. And if I could, still do IVF after I give birth, like within a few months of giving birth. I'd most definitely still use the funds if I could, at least if it worked out to where at least we could try to get some embryos in the freezer to have for the future, or if it just only worked out, to where we only had, embryos grow to the point where we could just do a fresh cycle and, just do whatever transfer we could. I'd still do that, because of the things that I know now about IVF and infertility in general. Like, I'd still, jump at that opportunity to be able to do that. So yeah, and for all of you guys, of course, like I think I said earlier in the video, I'm happy, and congratulations to any of you that have recently found out that you're pregnant that I don't know about, or for those of you who I do know are pregnant, I'm hoping that your pregnancies are going well. And for those of you who maybe are still stuck, as I call it, treading water of sorts in this whole infertility kind of cesspool, I don't know what you want to call it. My heart goes out to you guys, because of course, I get it, because I'm still here. I feel like I'm still, kind of running, like on a hamster wheel, like, even though now me getting my medications, which I don't know, did I say that to you guys? So I did get my medication box today in the mail. I just did a little snippet video of me emptying out the box in the video prior to this one. So of course I was relieved and excited to get that box. That really felt like a Christmas, more than I think the first time when I got meds for IVF, because that was so unexpected for me to be able to get that benefit. And I'm so thankful that worked out. But yeah, so I'm also considering doing a Q&A here soon. So if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, I'll link that down below. As well, if you have any other questions for me, of course, you can leave that in the comments below. And you guys just wait until you hear from me again, because of course, here to come, I'm sure I will have plenty to be able to divulge to you guys. So I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. I know this was a long one.